point, I'd like to invite Cllr Da Costa to ask a question or make a short statement. So, Cllr Da Costa.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. But before I start, and say that we have our differences, but I really appreciate, I can see on your faces the amount of work and effort that you all put in. So, thank you very much for every one of you cabinet members and officers. I appreciate your time. I can see the strain on some of you. Thank you. Anyway, back to the comments on the paper. Look, we're faced with multiple environmental crises: climate change, the impact on human and non-human life, biodiversity losses, which are extinction levels at the moment. Only today, the US declared 23 birds, fish, and other species extinct. And of course, there's microplastics entering the human food chain and affecting us. So there is a climate emergency. And here's the scary thing. The climate is deteriorating more rapidly than the worst case scenarios that scientists have predicted. So I applaud the proposal to set up engagement structures with Secretariat support, involving the public, mobilising the public, and facilitating mobilisation by the public. I applaud the £250,000 committed for each of the 3 years, although I do hope that the £250,000 is without ties and so is committed for new stuff by the engagement board, rather than to just pay for the salaries of existing officers or existing RBWM projects. But there is a climate emergency, and we have less than 9 years to make a radical impact. So I have 4 requests of you, Cabinet. One, I would ask that we set up the climate partnership this year and pull forward some of the £750,000 into this year, because our children don't have time for further procrastination. The second thing I ask is that the money is over and above the funding of current RBWM officers and current or proposed RBWM projects. The third point is that we must ensure that the climate partnership is open to all. We are all in this together, and as Cllr Stimson says, this is everyone's problem. However, there is a problem. The elephant in the room is the Council's lack of ambition with regard to reducing carbon emissions to zero by 2030 for all its operations, all its contractors, to ensuring that all of our infrastructure, including IT in schools and hospitals, is able to withstand 50-degree heat, droughts, wildfires, floods, and periods of intense cold. Really, our lack of ambition to eradicating single-use plastics from our supply chain to stop adding to the coming microplastic health problems. And don't worry, I'm getting to a final point, the fourth point, of course. But national parks are not enough. Net gain from biodiversity is not enough in the face of the large-scale extinctions we're already facing. So I like to say that 10% net gain, 10% of nothing is nothing. We actually need wholesale restoration of habitat in towns, outside of towns. And all of these things obviously have to be prosecuted through our planning regulations. And indeed, every single decision that this council takes, every policy it creates, and every regulation we establish. In other words, it's the council's responsibility to put all of these objectives into its corporate plan, because that's where we're going to be setting out the criteria for all of our decisions. So, Councillor Johnson, my fourth request is that you include in our corporate plan the objectives to achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2030, or you may say 2050, but included in that as an objective. Ensure that climate resilience is thought and prosecuted in all of our assets, including broadband, schools, hospitals, and our roads, for example. That biodiversity restoration and the elimination, we look for biodiversity restoration, not just net gain, because net gain is not enough, and the elimination of single-use plastics from our supply chain. Phoebe commented earlier on, listen, we need to give our children hope for the future with our actions. So to reduce eco-anxiety now and to safeguard their future as far as possible. I agree with the paper, but I would ask that you'd include those 4 questions and those 4 comments and requests that I've already made. Thank you.